Hello and welcome to another edition of Establish the Pool, Week 7. My name is Adam Levitan. Each week on this show, I'm joined by Mark Dankenbring and Peter Jennings to talk, you guessed it, NFL pools. Peter is not here today on vacation, but me and Mark are here to grind the cocks. Mark, how's it going?
It's good. Yeah, definitely grinding. This week has flown by with NBA starting, and so excited to focus in a little bit on NFL and talk through some games with you.
Yeah, NBA props are absolutely blasting right now. NBA team is taking 5, 10, even more props per night. Absolutely out of control. So many plus EV bets to take. Anyways, on today's show, we're going to look through week 6 through the lens of pools. I know everyone out there is in a little bit of a different format. We are going to talk confidence pools that we're running with our friends at Run Your Pool, Survivor, and also Underdog Fantasy Pick'em stuff at the end. Remind everyone this show is indeed brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. This Pick'em game is kind of a prop style fantasy game from Underdog. Stay tuned for more on that. At the end, you will have a chance to win some money as well for free. All right. First up, Mark, let's talk confidence pool. We ended up with 2,352 entries in the ETR confidence pool on Run Your Pool. The format here is you pick 6 games against the spread each week. You rank them from 1 to 6. You get 6 points if your 6-point team covers, etc. In week 6, only 2 people went 6-0 in the whole pool, but no one went 0-6. So it's the first time that's happened all pool. That's good. Shout out to you guys. Peter went 4-2. He's in 305th place. Mark went 3-3. He's in 173rd place. I also went 3-3. I fell back a little bit to 65th place overall. You know, my big thing last week, Mark, was I thought the Dolphins were going to win the game. And so I just kind of went all in on it. I had the Dolphins as my 6. Skylar Thompson goes down. I'm not going to say that they would have won the game if Skylar hadn't gone down, but I'm just going to say it too. I'm just going to say it. They would have won the game if Skylar Thompson wouldn't have gone down. Teddy comes in and they choke. I had Seattle as my 5. I mean, imagine the Cardinals being a road favorite. That was ridiculous. Lost Jacksonville as my 4. That one hurt. I really didn't think Matt Ryan could play that well anymore. And Matt Ryan played his ass off. So credit to him. Unbelievable. Jacksonville still had a really good chance to win that game and to cover. And they didn't. And so 3-3 for me, but did lose my 6 and my 4, which wasn't great. Any thoughts on last week, Mark, before we get to week 7?
Well, I think the Dolphins commentary is a little funny since Tyreek almost went for like 200 yards and Waddle like 120 himself. So I'm not sure how much better Skylar would have done. But yeah, definitely a little bit of a tough beat there. I think no one going winless last week was, an indication that the chalk performed pretty well. The Eagles, who were, had moved from -4.5 to like -6.5, -7, cruised against the Cowboys. The Bengals pulled it out against the Saints, and that line had moved quite a bit. And then the Patriots as well had moved, I think, over the key number of 3 from 3.5 to 2.5 against the Browns. And those all 3 won. So, decent week for the chalk. Not sure if that means, the plays with the big edge this week will get even more owned or more used, but certainly something to note with last week, everyone or no one, having a winless week.
Yeah. And for this week, the guys that Run Your Pool sent us some data, the top 5% of pickers in their database so far, and it's very early. They are on Chiefs -2.5 at San Francisco and Jets +3.5 at Denver. As we move to the Run Your Pool line for this week, I mean, I don't know where this opener came from, but Jets +3.5. You get the Russell Wilson shoulder stuff. You get the Russell Wilson hamstring stuff, which I'm sure contributed to this in some sense. I still think Russ is going to play, but people have just like completely given up on the Denver Broncos. Now, I don't think this was not one that I feel great about, Jets as a road favorite, but how can I ignore a contest line of +3.5 when the line now is like Jets -1 or a pick in most places? So I think it's a key part of pools this week. How do you handle the Jets stuff, Mark?
Yeah, we're showing almost a 25% edge on the Jets here, and I think the highest we've had in previous weeks is like 15 or 16%. So just a massive edge here. I'm curious. I think like if you want to play this contrarian and not play the Jets, I think in something like Run Your Pool where you're picking 6 teams, I would want to use the Jets. And if you're kind of want to fade it a little bit against the rest of the pool, maybe use them as your 1 or 2 pointer. So if they do lose, it doesn't hurt you as much. I would imagine a lot of people are going to lock them in as their 6-pointer on the week. So, you can kind of like partially fade them without fully fading. I think that might be the way to go with just a massive edge like this. And yeah, I mean, it seems like the Jets defense is relatively legit. And going up against Russ and this Broncos offense, lowest scoring offense in the league, like you got to think 3.5, they can potentially, or they can cover that. So I think it's a decent play.
Imagine giving Russ Wilson $250 million and then waking up in week 7 of the first year of the contract and you're a home dog to the New York Jets. I mean, it's sick, man. And honestly, I think the Broncos are going to show up actually and win the game. So if I use this, I'll probably use it as my 1 or my 2. As Mark said, but this is a bit of an IKB because they can still just can lose the game by 3 and you still win in the pool. And that's kind of where all the value comes from. There aren't big edges across the board. You see that 10.5 to 13 on the Bucks. That's somewhat from the Christian McCaffrey trade. And I think just general malaise, PJ Walker starting again, not Sam Darnold. That one is interesting to me, but I would just wanted to note that going from 10.5 to 13 isn't worth that much, only 9.5%. It's worth more just to go from 2.5 to 3, as you see with Jacksonville against the Giants there. Seahawks one, I think, is interesting, but I give you my IKB of the week, Mark. I do want your comments on those, but my IKB of the week is down here. Who are the Green Bay Packers to be a road favorite, a 5.5-point road favorite? This team, I mean, they have a lot of problems in so many different spots, do the Green Bay Packers. And I think the Commanders actually getting a quarterback that they want to play for in there that everybody likes, in there that has led this team before and played reasonably, and Taylor Heineke. I'll be taking the 5.5 on Washington. So any thoughts on that one? Any other pool thoughts?
I agree. 5.5 does seem like a lot for the Packers just on the road. Washington does still have a strong defensive line, and that's where the Packers have struggled so far this season, even though they've got Bakhtiari and Elgton Jenkins in the lineup. The Jets just really destroyed them up front last week. So I think that is definitely a decent claim. I'm not sure how successful the Washington offense is going to be, but they at least have some solid skill players to mix in. It doesn't look like Dotson's going to play this week, but McLaurin and then all their running backs are healthy. So I think, they should be okay there, be able to at least match the Packers. In terms of the other games up top, the Buccaneers against the Panthers is like, if they can't win this game and just crush the Panthers, what are we even doing here kind of thing? Like the Panthers are just so lacking in talent offensively, tossing out PJ Walker last week, who had a negative ADOT. And the Bucks defense obviously strong, bounce back narrative after that tough loss against Pittsburgh. 10.5 is a lot to lay, but the Panthers team total this week is down to 13, like the lowest it's been of any team all season. So if the Bucks can score 24 plus points, I think they cover that. Seahawks, I kind of want to wait on some injury stuff there on the Chargers side, see if Keenan Allen's going to play. The Chargers do have a bye next week, so they might hold him out another week just to get him fully 100%. They also, I think Corey Linsley, their center who missed last week, he missed practice for a couple of days with illness. I'm not sure what his status will be. And the Chargers have, struggled on the offensive line. So that would be a key missing piece for them as well. So kind of waiting on some injury news there. And then the Seahawks, have just continued to kind of outperform expectations. So don't necessarily love betting against them. So I think right in the Seahawks there at plus 6.5 with that line down to, plus 5, plus 4.5 is solid. Curious your take on the Dolphins here. The Steelers, it looks like they're pretty much getting all their healthy guys or their injured secondary pieces back that missed last week. Pickett is expected to play. Freiermuth was clear from his concussion. Curious your thoughts on the Dolphins.
Yeah, I think getting Tua back raises their ceiling, right? Like I think Tua's floor is kind of similar to Skyler or to Teddy Bridgewater, but Tua gives them a different element, I think, on offense where they can be more aggressive. And as Mark said, I mean, you saw Tyreek still go completely nuke even with Teddy Bridgewater last week. But yeah, I think that one's okay. Getting across 6.5 to 7.5, I think means something. We'll see where that line goes though. And that's certainly what I'm going to ask David out about on the show tonight. You mentioned the Seahawks one. I'm a little scared that like at any point, Geno and the Seahawks can turn back into a pumpkin or whatever the expression is. Yeah, that one scares me a little bit, but certainly good line movement there. I just think the public is kind of on the Seahawks a little bit at this point, which scares me to some degree. But yeah, interesting week here. I want
What
to
about,
move.
well, can we talk about the Jags real quick against the Giants? Because
Yeah.
it's the second highest edge. The Jags have moved from -2.5 to -3, and these are just two teams I just don't have a great read on at this point.
Mhm.
The Jags have kind of underperformed the last couple weeks after taking it to the Chargers, and the Giants just seem to keep playing above their head. And now they at least have Wandale back for some receiving weapon there. I don't know. Just curious your thoughts on that game.
Line seems right to me. Jacksonville by 3, at home. Line seems right to me. I thought Jacksonville would for sure beat the Colts last week. Was wrong, and yeah, I think the line is right. I mean, Dable is just too good. I
Yeah.
think Jacksonville has more talent, but Dable is just the man. Love Dable. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna include that one or not.
Yeah, kind of a stay away from me as well. Again, tough
And,
to read those teams.
and by the way, if you're behind in this pool or really any pool that has this Jets 3.5 line, I mean, if you're like way behind, if I was in like 500th or 1,000th place or something like that, there's no way I would use the Jets. Like, just no way. Okay, let's get to the most exciting thing. I'm actually excited. I mean, you guys know me. It takes a lot for me to get excited. I'm getting towards not a full 3.9, but I'm getting towards like 3.5 inches on the Survivor thing. Me and Peter are both still in the Survivor on DraftKings that started in week 1. We lost a ton more people last week. More than 50% of the remaining pool was eliminated last week in Survivor. We're down to 1,099 out of 13,000 entries in the big DraftKings $100 Survivor pool, $1 million to the winner, please God, one time. The big ones that lost last week were the 49ers losing to the Falcons on the road, the Bucks losing to the Steelers on the road, and the Packers losing at home to the Jets. I think, the 49ers and the Bucks one, I mean, it was hard to consider those for me as road dogs, as road favorites. Just really not where I try to be. I ended up taking the Rams home against the Panthers, and it was hairy for a little bit, but they escaped with the win, and a relatively easy win. And I felt really good about that because I don't like the Rams suck, and I do not want to have to use them again. So I feel really good about where I'm at. I have used Tampa already. I think they're a team that's going to be very popular this week against Carolina. We do have the early data here. Let me read it here. Early data on Survivor. 17% are on the Raiders home against the Texans. 17% on the Patriots home against the Bears. 16% on the Bucks at Carolina. I think that number would be higher if more people didn't already use the Bucks. Dallas 11% home against the Lions. Cincinnati 8% home against the Falcons. Baltimore 5% home against Cleveland, and the Chargers 4% home against Seattle. There's a lot of games outside of this Tampa game, Mark. There's a lot of games that are around a 7-point spread this week. How are you thinking about Survivor? And did you re-enter? Because I know there's been a bunch of second chance survivors. There's week 6, there's week 7, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I feel like a fool because I talked about re-entering last week, and like when I went to go do it after the show, I realized it was actually started in week 7.
Yeah.
So that's why on DraftKings at least. So that's why there are so few entrants in it. So yeah, I do plan to get back in this week because I think it's an interesting week. Definitely. You mentioned, a lot of people that have or that are still left, have either used the Bucks or a lot of people that used them last week are out. So I think the Bucks are interesting. Again, I just don't see any way they lose this game to the Panthers. And if they do, then, you can throw a little tantrum and retire, probably, in Survivor, kind of like Brady might. So, otherwise, I think it's interesting. You didn't mention the Dolphins there. They are not being picked very highly right now. And they're a team, you mentioned right around that 7-point favorite. So I think that's interesting as contrarian. Otherwise, the Raiders, I'm a little concerned about just because Darren Waller looks like he'll miss that game. Hunter Renfrow popped up as a DNP on the practice report yesterday. And then they're coming off a bye and playing Houston, who's coming off a bye. So I think there's just a little added variance in that game. We typically see teams either perform a little better, make some good adjustments on the bye, or they come out a little flat. So, I would probably like to avoid them, but it is, their best spot of the season at home against the Texans. So since it looks like they're going to be the highest owned, I'd probably fade the Raiders. The Patriots, I think, are my favorite this week. Definitely their best game, at home against the Bears. Just don't really see any way that Justin Fields has success against this, Belichick-led defense. So I feel pretty confident about the Pats there, and they're don't have many good weeks left to use them. So that's probably my number one pick of the week. The Bucks and the Pats. If you have the Bucks left, I feel pretty confident using them. They actually don't have too many more games that look like layups anymore. They do have Carolina, but that is not until week 17. So I think this is a decent week to use the Bucks as well.
Yeah, the Patriots stuff is interesting. I agree. I don't really see any other spots to use the Patriots this year. The Bailey Zappi, Mac Jones stuff. We'll see on that. I've seen stunts of life from Justin Fields, but yeah, when you get this deep, and you've already used a bunch of good teams, they start to have to take some hairy stuff. So yeah, I think New England is okay. I think Cincinnati is interesting, but they have a home game against Carolina in week 9. So I think I'm going to try to save the Bengals here. The Miami one is super interesting. They're getting all their pieces back. Kenny Pickett back. All their wide receivers are healthy. Like, at least on paper, like Pittsburgh, I think is decent. That one scares me a little bit. I'm curious what you think of Baltimore or Dallas, Mark. We have Baltimore home against Jacoby Brissett, and we have Dallas home against the Lions.
I'll start with Dallas. I don't know. I'm definitely hesitant to play them this week just because, Dak's first game back, not really sure how he's going to play, how crisp he's going to be. Lions are coming off their bye, and it looks like, Swift and Amon-Ra St. Brown will both play. And they have an offensive line that can kind of counteract, Dallas's strength on the defensive line. So I definitely don't love that with the Lions, getting healthier and coming off their bye, playing Dak in his first game. I would like to fade the Cowboys this week. They also have some, strong games upcoming. They play the Bears next week at home, which, I'd rather have. They play the Giants at home, Texans at home later in the year. So I think I'd rather hold on to the Cowboys.
Okay.
Baltimore is interesting. They just haven't played that well the last couple, they beat the Bengals on that Sunday night game, and then they go and kind of blow the lead against the Giants. I definitely don't have a great read on them at the moment. Doesn't look like Rashad Bateman's going to play. Doesn't look like J.K. Dobbins is going to play. Mark Andrews said he will, but he also missed a couple days of practice. The Browns have been at least okay until they got rolled by the Patriots last week. So I don't know. I don't feel too strongly there. I think the Ravens are okay, but don't have a great read.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I don't feel great about the Ravens either here. And on Detroit and Dallas, it's just hard for me to see Detroit putting up a lot of points on this defense. Like, I understand the offensive line stuff, and I agree. It's just hard for me to see Detroit putting up a ton of points in this spot. And we know, like, Detroit's defense can't stop anyone. So, like, if Dallas can get to 24 or 28, do I see Detroit scoring more than that? I don't think so. I think my lean, though, is New England and then probably Dallas. But
yeah, God. I do think New England will be the most owned this week, though, just because it's such a clear spot. Not too much else left on the schedule that looks this good. So
okay,
kind of have to balance that.
If you were starting from scratch, a new Survivor this week, which I did enter on DraftKings, the week 7, the Survivor's like 4th chance or whatever that starts week 7, would you go Tampa right out of the gate here? Because a lot of this data is going to be skewed. Like, we don't have data on the Survivor that starts in week 7, right? But I would assume that if we did, Tampa would be massively owned, most likely. What do you think about if you're starting now?
Yeah, I plan to start and do a few entries. The majority of them, I think, will be Bucks. And then I think I'd probably go with the Dolphins as kind of my contrarian one, since it doesn't seem like anyone's really on them. I think those would probably be my 2 favorite, because I think, again, the chalk will probably condense on the Patriots a little bit.
Yeah, let me just make sure that I didn't look over the Dolphins here. Yeah, Dolphins are at 3% on Run Your Pool right now. So yeah, interesting. All right. Yeah, Ozzy points out Atlanta's 6-0 ATS. Atlanta's been playing, man, and I think people are underrating their defense, and yeah, Atlanta's been, they can run the ball so well. Like, I certainly don't feel great about the Bengals either.
Yeah, just their style of play lends to, kind of tough games to predict in terms of how much they want to run the ball and control the clock. Like, they're just going to shorten the game and, obviously they're relatively talent deficient. So that's the strategy, right? It's just to shorten the game, limit the number of possessions for the opposing team. And their running game has been effective. So,
all right, let's move on to the final segment of the program, the Underdog Pick'em segment. Underdog has these pick'em games. It's essentially fantasy style, but you just pick 2 to 5 overs or unders on players. You get paid out if they hit. Subscribers of ETR, we do have the table up on Saturdays. We add our projection detail in there so you can compare our projections to the lines that are up on Underdog. On this show, each week, myself, Peter, and Mark pick one leg of a 3-teamer. If it hits, the guys at Underdog go into the Underdog channel in our Discord and randomly pick one person in there to win $100. If we lose, we roll it on to next week. Somebody already won $300 last week. We did not get there with our parlay, and therefore there's $200 on the line this week. I'll be picking for Peter this week. Mark, why don't you go ahead with your pick so that I can go ahead and get these Underdog lines up?
For sure. I'm going to go with the new starting quarterback in Washington and over on his rush attempts. So Taylor Heineke over 2.5 rush attempts. We have about 3.5 projected at ETR. And last year when Heineke took over as the starter, he went over this line in 10 of 12 games. Then he got a little banged up, missed a game, and went under in the final 3 games of the season. So I think with him healthy, he's going to look to scramble a bit. He's got some athleticism and can run. So I think it's just too low of a line here for his first game. The Packers also have a good pass rush. So, they're probably going to get to him a few times and he's going to have to scramble. And I think the over here is a solid play.
Is that line available on sports books? Do you know?
I didn't look. Let me give it a check now.
I just wanted to point out that a lot of these lines that Underdog puts out are very in tune and very close to what sportsbooks have, which we're obviously betting into and shaping the market that way. When you can find something that isn't on a book, sometimes you can get a softer line, and I suspect that might be the case on Heineke, but I could be wrong. It could be out.
It looks like Caesars has it up at 2.5. So okay. Same there.
Okay. Let's go to Peter's pick. I'll be picking for Peter. Peter is going to go Terry McLaurin over.
Oh, baby.
51.5 receiving yards.
Shades of Gabe Davis.
Shades. This is get in early on Terry McLaurin, Taylor Heineke connection. I think we saw a lot of passes going to Curtis Samuel and the tight ends and the running backs and Jahan Dotson. I think Taylor Heineke, as he showed last year with a 25+% target share at Terry McLaurin, knows where his bread is buttered more. And so Terry McLaurin over 51.5, just too much talent to be down there at 51.5. Disrespectful on Terry McLaurin. And then for me, I am going to go with a play that I always like to make. You guys know me. Find the best players in the league and bet their unders. That's really how you have fun doing pick'em. That's how you have fun betting. I'm going with Jamar Chase under 84.5 receiving yards. I think when T. Higgins is out, I think there's a fair line. T. Higgins is practicing in full this week. And so T. Higgins has seen just as many targets as Jamar Chase when they've both been healthy. Tyler Boyd is also healthy. Also, we have a Hayden Hurst revenge game here. And he actually does have revenge in his heart. He said he wants to have a big game. He felt disrespected by the Falcons. And so I could see some scenarios where maybe there's some extra scripted stuff for Hayden Hurst here. Jamar Chase, obviously he can make big play at any time. His ADOT has not been great. And so I think under 84.5 makes a lot of sense to me there. Heineke over 2.5 rushing attempts. McLaurin over 51.5 receiving yards. Jamar Chase under 84.5 receiving yards. And again, on the Jamar Chase one, I would just say that I think Atlanta's defense is underrated relative to market. I think the market just thinks Atlanta's defense is total dust. I'm not so sure on that.
Yeah.
And the game is very good. So,
and shout out to Underdog too. They just got their gaming license in Colorado. So I believe we can actually bet on this now in Colorado.
Oh,
Underdog is live. I think we can do the pick'em. So
really?
Yeah.
I'll have to confirm that before I do something illegal on screen.
And they're working on getting it going in Ohio too. So I feel like they're catering, just to exactly to me going home Ohio for the holidays, Colorado all the other times. Thank you, Underdog.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you all for being here. Please, God, let me advance in Survivor and let everyone else get eliminated, please, one time. For Mark. For Peter on a golf course somewhere. I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.